here. Since I'm not American, I'm not going to be woohoo, yeah, awesome. So I'm on fire on the inside. But I'm Swedish, so I'm very, very calm on the outside. So it's not going to work. I'm still excited. So let's go with the slides. So the thing is, I've never been to Romania before, so it's always fun to go to a new country and to see what it's like, and also to get the local experience of being serenaded by two very, very old guys. They played a Swedish song, whatever that was. Probably it's more to get me in the mood, I guess. And eating some local delicacies and having a good time. And I think also on the upside, when you go to a different country, is when you try to figure out about the infrastructure. What's one's internet like? What's the latency? What's the connection speed? And you look around and you see it's a bit dark, but it's just cables hanging everywhere. So it'll be interesting to try it out and see how far we can push it. So I've been working with JavaScript for a long, long time, like since the last century. So I'm a dinosaur, which sort of fits with Mozilla. And when you work with dinosaurs, I haven't worked with dinosaurs, but I worked with JavaScript for a long time, you sort of come beyond the coding. Then you start posting for t-shirts, you start modeling. Which, it's a natural evolution, right? You're not the best developer anymore, but people still know that once you do something, and you just cling on to it. And of course, the other guy is Patrick. And also, being Swedish is, of course, as soon as you go anywhere, it's IKEA, right? So basically, that's all the things that people know about Sweden. So it'll be interesting to talk later and see what your perception about Sweden actually is. And all I can say is that everything that you heard is true. Okay? We're also the country that have, and this you might not know, we're also the country that have the best warning signs ever. Because, instead of disclaimers, instead of reading user agreements and all that, like, this is the thing. We have these everywhere. And basically what it says, like, it's dangerous, I don't know why we do this to begin with. It's dangerous to stand on the bench in the waiting hall. But if you do, it's going to tip over, your head is still going to be stuck up there, and the rest of the body is going to be down there. Everywhere. So, our children are probably scarred for life. It's like, no, you can do it. No, I'm not going to touch it. I don't want to die. And that's sort of the same thing with the way we approach the web as well. Like, I don't know. So, part of my work, I'm working for Mozilla. Mozilla is a non-profit organization. So basically, the idea with Mozilla is to make sure that the internet stays open and that we don't have just one player that has too much control. So we just try to bring a good balance to it and to make sure that we have standardized technologies instead of just a technology that only one company uses or controls all the way. So part of my work is speaking at conferences, it's writing articles and such, and I also work as the editor of the Mozilla Hacks blog. So we have a blog for developers. And the way I approach the blog is basically to have content that would be interesting to me. So it's not just kind of, press releases or something like that. That would be terrible, and no one cares about press releases. Well, at least we don't. So it's more about, as a developer, what would I like to know? So it's not only Mozilla technologies, it's anything that's based on open source or the open web and how you can learn things. So with this presentation, and I started talking with the other speakers and trying to figure out what should I talk about. I could talk a lot about code, and you can delve into some really deep details in code, and that's interesting, right? But like in the introduction, I'm sure that at least 99% of you are smarter than I am, so that's the first problem. The second problem is that all the other speakers are smarter than I am as well. So it's like, okay, shit, what should I do? So I talk with them, trying to figure out what they're going to talk about, and Tero is going to be the presentation after me. There's going to be code, there's going to be some really cool stuff. So I wanted to try and bring a balance to the conference. Like, when I go to conferences, and I'm happy to see a good number of conferences, you want to have a good balance in the sense that you have some talks that are, about thinking or perspective, and some talks that are really deep down into code and how you build stuff. So that's my aim here. I might fail miserably, and in that case, I'm sorry, and my name is Patrick Lauke. If you like it, I'm Robert. So talking about the name of this presentation, I'm always interested in trying to sort of, and this sounds so pretentious, but I'm trying to figure out how mankind works. Like, how do we think about things? What's the next step beyond writing the fastest loop? So there's something called the Kubler-Ross model. And I know it's morning, and I know you're tired, and this is going to sound, I'm not going to make you do things, by the way. And this is going to sound really, really depressing. But the Kubler-Ross model is about the 5 stages of grief. And basically, it's about sorrow. It's the 5 stages before you die, or someone close to you dies. I know, it's cheerful, right? I'm going to start on a positive note. I'm Swedish, damn it. It's dark all the time. We have polar bears. Of course I talk about grief. And reading about this model, the 5 steps before dying is first denial, and then anger, and then you start bargaining and see what you can do about it. And then you sort of turn to depression, and then eventually acceptance, and then you're dead. So thinking about this reminds me of something. This is like web development. This is the same thing. We go through all the same phases. Anything from denial to acceptance at the end of the day. So my goal with the presentation today is basically to talk about thinking and perspective around this and development and how we work with it. And if we start talking about denial, that's kind of the normal reaction. You get presented with something. Let's say, I work as a consultant doing web development for a long, long time. I had hair when I started, so it's forever ago. And we start doing that, and you always have a project manager or a customer or something, and they present you with a project idea. And of course, this is your first reaction. So the denial phase is kind of, the project is shit. Like, it's a terrible idea, but you need to get paid. You have yourself, and you might have a family to feed as well. So you go along with it. It's like, okay, sure, I'll deal with it, right? And they put you up with a great team. You have amazing team members. So you know it's going to be a good time, right? You're going to learn from this. You want to have this on your resume. You want to bring this to the next level. So, but denial is not going to help, right? Because you still have a job. Even, you run your own company, or you're employed by someone, but still, you need to get paid. So then you get angry, because anger is kind of always the normal reaction of sort of taking everything off you. You can always blame someone else. You can be upset. It's not going to solve anything, but it's kind of venting. And you go through all the different phrases, why me? It's not fair. How can this happen to me? Who's to blame? You always want to blame someone. Maybe I might have a weird view on what our job is like, but this is, I don't know, it's getting too close for me. So basically, you freak out, right? You lash out on anyone or anything that's close to you. And the interesting thing about anger is that you do things you never thought you would do to actual nice individuals. And you just go for it. Actually, I can never motivate having this picture in a talk, but it's the best picture I've ever seen. So I need to put it in there. And I can totally picture this baby eating Smurf after Smurf. So, you've gone through the denial. It doesn't really help. Anger helps for a while. It might make you feel better, but it doesn't solve the actual problem. So then you start bargaining. So you try and strike a deal. Maybe it's not too bad. What could I do? Is there any compromise here that might make things better? So should try to look at it from a different perspective. I'll do anything for a few more years, in this case to live, but a few more years of good work, or I'll do my life savings. I'll do anything to make this better. And you start looking at the project idea, and it might look like shit, but you can still be happy about it. There's a silver lining somewhere. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks. It is, right? But still, a smile can save any day. I work with too many people from California, sorry. Just love it. And then, especially as an engineer or as a developer, you try to have metrics and numbers. You need to find some kind of logic in this. So you start up with some really weird ass numbers. So like, how many people drowned in a swimming pool compared to how many movies Nicolas Cage made? And then you see there's a correlation here. If he makes more movies, more people die. And that's fine, right? Because the world is not it's not black and white. As long as you can prove it with facts and numbers and statistics, you're good. So you start applying this in your project. Like how can we make this different? How can I tweak this into my better approach to it? And then of course it sort of turns into depression. At the end of the day, when you kind of feel helpless, you can't do anything about it, you just want to give up. And you go into, I'm so sad, why should I bother with anything? And it, I think there's, I don't know if you've seen the comic Calvin and Hobbes, which is basically the small little boy and the tiger friend that he has. And he has this wonderful saying, which is something like, nothing helps a bad mood like spreading it around. Which basically means, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to make sure that everyone else is in a bad mood as well. This is kind of the state that matches that. So you just cave, right? I don't want to be the guy with cats and presentations, but I've given up. They're good for something. And once you've sort of gone through the sad state, you get into acceptance. I can't do anything. I just, this is going to happen. I can't change this. So you look at it and you accept it. I don't know why you would do this to the poor tiger. This must be the most confusing thing ever. And you try to convince yourself, right? You work in your project, you have the timeline, you might be working in an agile fashion, which basically means all you do is have stand-up meetings that should be 5 minutes, but they're actually 2.5 hours. And you're standing there and you have your phone, you're trying to tweet, and then eventually, even if you need to go, you go to the toilet, right? And you just sit there for a while and zone out. So any project, you turn into the acceptance. It's like, this is it, right? Shit. Okay. Actually, it was just before my talk, I wanted to just go to the restroom, and I asked for the direction out there, and they told me to go sort of towards the plants. And I've never been to Romania before. I don't know how you do it. I just saw a shitload of plants, and I'm like, okay. Well, you want to do as a locals, right? You want to fit in. And you go there. Eventually, I found my way. But it's just the first thought of, again, acceptance. Like, okay then. And I think when you look at projects, you sort of get to this phase, right? It's going to be okay. I can't fight it, so I need to join it. I need to work together with the other people, with the amazing team that I had during these circumstances. It can't be changed. And a friend of mine who works for Google, I think he has this great saying that we're all idiots with deadlines. So even and especially as developers, you want to have the perfect plan, the perfect approach. This is how you code. Then you of course spend days fighting about which line you want to have the curly braces on. You want to use semicolons or not? Of course you do. And tabs versus spaces and all that. But when you pass that point, you need to deliver something. You need to actually have something at the end of the day. And I actually think it's a good thing. I think deadlines are good because, especially from a university perspective, you can work on the same thing for 5 years and you think it's going to be perfect, but you never deliver something. Like the design is the best ever. It's like, you know, the universe hasn't been as well designed as your website, but you don't deliver on it. So you just sort of dive into it. You just accept that it's going to happen. And I think this is sort of the way I view projects, right? You completely overestimate what you can do. It's like, I can do this jump. I'll make it. I'll get to the other side, right? So my approach here is to talk about the acceptance phase, because it hasn't been kind of a pick-me-up talk so far. So I want to talk about the acceptance phase, but with a twist. I actually want to make something good out of it. Like, I think you can apply these 5 steps to anything in life. Like, it could be your relationship with your partner, it could be work, it could be whatever happens, right? But I think the acceptance phase is the only one that you can change. You can choose to accept something, but you can make something better out of it. Instead of just accepting as in giving up, you can accept the circumstances, you can accept anything that's going on, but you can make it slightly better. And I wanted to, I'm probably going to get fired for this, but I wanted to talk about a few things that we've done with Mozilla, and to be honest about it. Because any company you look at and they present a project and say, oh, we did this and it was amazing, and then we all hugged and we were singing Kumbaya by the campfire. It's like, that's not the way it works, right? We go through all these 5 phases, and hopefully we get to a point where we accept what we've done and what we accomplished. So looking at some of our projects and then something more concrete is open web apps. So we were looking at, like in the mid-90s, you could build HTML. You had gray web pages, you might have a big HR element to divide sections. Eventually we got images, and it was mind-blowing, right? And that's a long, it's about 20 years ago, and it was great, and you could sort of look at it on any computer. You would use Alta Vista to find something. And then something happened in the mobile world, and especially when you had the advent of the first iPhone coming out, which was amazing and groundbreaking. And they said, you can build things with web technologies and build apps and all that, and that sounded great. The problem is that you didn't have any access to the hardware or any APIs, so just web pages. So eventually they went into Objective-C and the App Store and all that. And I think, this is where we are now, 20 years later, and this is for me the state of depression, right? I do like the summary, but every time asterisk, we have this shitty app, but you have to install it. And I think another description as well was, the thinking, we just go round and round here. It basically means that, you want to have those apps and you want to update them on the fly, and like the conclusion says, there's like, wait, it's the web. We've had it for a long, long time. Why are we doing this again? And why is every company doing this their own way? They want to build their things. They want to have control. They want to be able to influence you. They want you to use their stuff. And I think we need to try and get away from that. There are lots of good options, but you want to reach everyone. You want to make sure that everyone can take part of your content, not only if you have a certain device or something like that. So, looking at open web apps, I wanted to try, and this is going to be interesting, I wanted to apply the 5 stages here, going from denial to acceptance. And just what the approach was like. Like, talking about the comics I was showing is that, you have to install the app, or you have to build with a different language or a different operating system, like, Objective-C or their newer invention now for iOS, or Java for Android, etc., and then you can build some responsive design websites and all that, but just keep on building things, and then you have separate teams building different stuff. I guess Vince is going to talk about that with Spotify, for instance, which have different teams, lots of talented people, but they work on their thing, on their platform. And I think there's so much, not Spotify in particular, but like any company that has to do that, that's big enough to do that, to have separate teams. There's so much knowledge that's being missed, and there's so many efforts being duplicated. So we're looking at that, and of course the denial part is like, you must be kidding me. I have to use my own language for each kind of phone out there? That sucks. That's terrible. And then of course you go into kind of the anger phase. Oh, so there's an app store, and you have to approve what I built, so I have no control. If you don't like what I've done for whatever reason, you're not going to let it through. Amazing. This is great. Like, I used to be able to publish anything, but now I'm sort of back to begging for making it go live. And you're quite upset about it. And then the anger phase the bargaining phase is talking about, okay, so what can I do? Is there any compromise? So because you can't really fight, for instance, two big players in mobile. It's not like, oh, you're wrong, we're going to do it better. So how can you build on top of what they've accomplished? I mean, I think that iOS and Android, they both have great things as well. So how can we sort of work with that instead of against it? But still, especially coming from a Mozilla perspective, we want people to use open standardized technologies. We want people to use the open web instead of building something for just that specific platform. So you start looking at HTML5. Okay, what can we do with HTML5? What if we start using wrappers? I mean, PhoneGap is by far the most popular one. But then you can still at least start in the end of, you use the technology that's open and you can use it on any platform. You might jump through some extra hoops to make sure that it actually works on iOS and Android, etc. But you start dealing with the platform. Will this actually help? And you get to a certain point, and then you get into the depression state, which is basically, well, I don't have hardware access. It doesn't really, it's not as good as a native app, whatever native app means, it depends. But I can't do all the things that I can do if I were to use that proprietary language that they use. Okay, and then you sort of turn into acceptance, like, well, this is the way it is. But the acceptance with a twist here is basically, well, we can accept what we have right now with the platform, but is there a way to make it better at least? Or can we give developers a good options? And also, can we come up with things that push the other players? Can we make Google, Apple, Microsoft, etc. to implement more things, more support for the web layer, more standardized APIs to access things, instead of just building their own things and their own SDKs. So for us, it's been trying to make sure that open web apps work on all platforms. Like we have a mobile operating system, Firefox OS, we just build apps with HTML5. But that's just our platform, right? And you need to be realistic about it. It's not like, and I don't think we would want that either. Like, let's say everyone in the world had Firefox OS phones. It's not the best world. It could be an interesting world. But it's still just one option, and one option is not good. We do want to have competition. We do want to push each other to make things better. So it's more about, okay, how can we make sure that if you build open web apps, if you build something based on HTML5, how can you make sure that it works everywhere? Sure, you use responsive design, but can you get access to the hardware? Can you make sure that it's installable and it works like a first-class citizen on that platform instead of just being a web page that just reloads as soon as you get a connection? So with open web apps, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. So let's say you're building websites right now. It could be a website for desktop, it could be something that's responsive and works on most tablets and mobile phones. The only thing that we wanted to add was a manifest file with information about your content, so we could make it installable. So we have a manifest file, which is in a JSON format. And all it does is just describe the app. So it says which version it is, the name of the app, different icons for different resolutions, retina, etc. and then some developer information on how you can install, localization, and similar. But basically, this is it. So if you're building websites, you could add something like this, and you build an open web app. And I think that's where you want to go. You want to have the minimum effort for what you build to make get the biggest spread possible out of that, and to be able to install it. And as you know, with APIs, if you do build something that hasn't been accepted or implemented by everyone, you have the prefix. So in our case right now, we have the MOS prefix. So you have navigator.mos apps, and you have an install method. So you could have a web page, or your website or company website that you build for a client. You can just call the install method. You point to the manifest file, and then it gets installed. That's all there is. And it's not only for Firefox OS that's built in, because we built it from scratch and we implemented support for it, but we also have it on desktop Firefox. We also have it on Android. And the interesting thing about the manifest file is it's taken some time, I admit. But especially with Chrome web apps, is that we're now getting to a point where we have a unified manifest format. So eventually we're going to get somewhere where you have manifest files to describe your open web app, and it will work on all different kinds of platforms. There might be some difference in APIs and such, but still we're getting closer and closer. I mean, the thing with Java, right, run everywhere is never going to happen, right? But at least we should aim in that direction. We should try and make it easier, not, this is iOS, boom, start from scratch. This is Android, boom, start from scratch. And we're also looking into, as everyone loves, especially working with HTML5 and app cache, offline support is not the most fun thing to build. Like, it's interesting if you want to reach the depression stage really fast. But how can we make that better? And there's work going into service workers and such to make that much, much better. And I believe, especially with Google and with Mozilla, making a lot of progress in getting that standardized and getting that implemented. There are all these test approaches to how to work with it. But I think with apps as well, we're just looking into two options. So basically, hosted apps is that you would run an app. You have the manifest file, you would run the app from your own website. So whenever you want to update the content, you just upload it to your website, and it's live for every user. So you're in complete control as the developer, which is the way it should be. You should not be begging anyone else to accept what you build or to push it live, right? You should push it live whenever you want to. As an option to that, we also try something called packaged apps, which is you can take all the files within your app and just zip it up, and then you install those files. So all the files are available locally on the device. You can still get things from your web server if you want to. One thing, and this is what I kind of think, I want to say necessarily that Apple went wrong, but in '97 when they came up with the first iPhone and you were building web apps, the problem was that it didn't have the API support. And they never really got to that point because business-wise, they have the great approach of locking developers in. You have the app stores, you have their native APIs and all that, and you need to build for that platform. And iPhones were by far the best mobile platform back then. And best user experience and all that, because what else did we have? Nokia's, with display that was just this big, and the button was bigger than the actual display. Of course, iPhones were great; they were amazing. They're still pretty good. But and I think that's a good thing, right? I mean, you need to see all the progress that we're making. But still, I think the problem there is that you don't have API support. So we started a project a couple of years ago called Web APIs. And we wanted to implement all these different APIs to make sure that from the web layer, you could build things that would work directly on the platform. That you could access the hardware, you can check the battery level, you can have proximity. So if I would have a phone, in JavaScript I would detect how close am I holding the phone to this podium right now. The interesting thing, of course, when you start with proximity and stuff like that, people start building Highlander apps. So you have sort by how close you get, which I like. I like the thinking. And you also have different lighting. Like I could, right now on a web page, I can detect the light conditions in here. I would hold the phone up, and I know how bright the light is. Am I out in the bright sunlight right now, or is it a really dark room? and I can adapt the user experience based on that. You know, the user might be in his or her living room right now. Maybe I should change the CSS. Maybe I should have a better contrast, etc. So I think, I don't know, I think it's around 28 new APIs right now. And of course with these APIs, is that we want to have them standardized, because we can build the best APIs in the world, but if we're the only ones supporting them, it's kind of pointless. Well, it's not pointless, it shows that it's possible, but if you can't use it everywhere, right. And Google have been implementing a few of them. Like a few of them have been standardized. And the way it is with standardization is basically that you need two separate implementations by two different players to get it standardized, and then you have a specification and all that. And the interesting part there, of course, is Samsung. And Samsung are massive, and if they want to implement an API, they can do it really fast. So in some cases, Samsung have liked some of the APIs that we come up with. They've done different implementations of it, and then we go into standardization. And I think, for me, this is sort of the acceptance approach here. Just, you know, sure, we have the different platforms, but how can we make it slightly better? How can we accept the situation that we have, but just tweak it a bit? And looking at Android right now, and looking at the market share of Android, which is huge, it's just going to keep on growing like that for a long time, I think, is we're trying to make web apps first-class citizens on Android as well. So we have something called the APK factory. So on Android, you have the APK files to install apps. So the thing you saw before with the install method, you point to the manifest to have your open web app. If you do that in Firefox on Android right now, we will automatically generate an APK. So the APK will be created for you and installed on the Android device. So basically, you have a real Android app out of the box. You don't need to know Java, you don't need to know about the actual local environment. You build your web app, you install that, and you have everything. So in the app drawer, you see all the open or recent apps, you get it there, you can switch between apps, you get the installs on home screens and all that, which is quite nice. And I think things like this is moving in the right direction, because as a developer, you want to focus on the actual use that you bring with your app. You want to have a nice user experience. You don't want to spend 95% of your time building slightly different versions of the same content. It should just work as much as possible. We have a lot of documentation on MDN, which you might have heard of. It's a pretty good resource for developers. It's also a wiki, so anyone could contribute. If you go in there, if you see anything that's wrong, you can just edit it or do updates or whatever you want to do with it. And also on the Mozilla Hacks blog, we had a number of different articles around this from different people. Like, it's not just us doing, I think the last article we have was a guy working for Adobe as an evangelist, but he likes the open web and he wants to build things with open web technologies. So he wrote a long article and he was really excited about it and the options that he had. How could he get further with open web apps? And for me, especially working as an evangelist or working with developer relations, I think one thing that's interesting is also to truly understand web developers. And enough, if you've experienced this, I've seen it way too many times, is when you have a big company and they have material about the things they're working on, they can say, well, here you have the presentation template, here you have, here's the package, take this back, go build something, right? And I'm not saying that they don't care about you, but it just doesn't scale to listen to you. And we really want to be different at Mozilla with that. We want to talk with you directly and see what you're doing, because this is your life. You spend more time, I'm pretty sure about this, you spend more time with your computer than anything else. So of course it should be good, and of course you want to do or make sure that the circumstances that you work during or under should be as good as possible. And one part there that I've been pushing with Mozilla is to have feedback channels, which is basically how can we put you developers in touch with Mozilla directly? How can you give your feedback about or around things that we work on? Because the normal thing is anything. Let's say Facebook changes the design. They change whatever, your friend link to the other side, and you have 400 million people crying, thinking it's the end of the world, right? But it never sort of, you don't have the discussion with people. People whine about it for a week, and then people move on. And we want to get something constructive out of this. We want to hear what you think about, what kind of features do you want? Let's say, more or less, it could be a wish list. And the way I started looking at this was with the Firefox developer tools. A good number of years ago, we had Firebug, and Firebug was a revolution. When it came out, like CSS, now I know why my button is messed up. I can see inheritance. Like, it was amazing. And of course, once you start using Firebug, you can never go back. You don't even know how you built websites before, right? And Firebug was prevalent for a good number of years. And I remember in 2009, I was speaking at a conference in Amsterdam, and Paul Irish, who works for Google, was speaking there as well. And the day before the conference, there was kind of a local meetup, kind of like an open mic night for stand-up, but about development. And Paul wanted to get up on stage and talk about the developer tools in Chrome. And for everyone, the developer tools in Chrome was not a joke, but it was more like, it's cute that you're trying, but we have Firebug. Why are you doing this? Just because, not invented here. How cute. So I remember him going up on stage, and he's saying, like, I know you all love Firebug, but, please listen to me. We're trying this, we're getting better. And people were like, yeah, okay, sure. And he showed some stuff, and it was okay, right? As you all know, the situation is a bit different today. Firebug has lots of good features. It's an open source project. We have people working on it and leading it. But at the same time, it uses a lot of memory, and it has a lot of different implications, because if it's not implemented directly as part of the web browser, you don't have access to all the same things. You can't sort of build the kind of built-in experience that you want. So a couple of years ago, we started working on our own native developer tools in Firefox. And the way it is, and it was kind of back to the Paul Irish approach with the Chrome developer tools. Like, we're trying this thing, and everyone's like, yeah, how cute, but we have Firebug, or we have Chrome now, we don't need you. And I think the learning there and looking, and especially with the different 5 phases here, going from sort of denial to acceptance, is, okay, so what can we do about this? We can just say that, no, just give us a chance, try our tools, right? And then it works to a certain extent. But I think with the feedback channels, and why I personally really care about this, is that we can be unique here. We can listen to you, and you can talk to us directly and tell us what you want. How can we make sure that we spend our time not guessing what you want, or building, developers have a tendency of building the things that they want themselves, for themselves, and not necessarily the things that other people want. So we have really smart people, but we want to give them more input and a greater perspective on things that developers actually need. So of course the first step with the denial was kind of denial from the world out there. And I'm sure in this room as well, like a number of you don't even know that there are native developer tools in Firefox. Like, we have Firebug, right? Firebug's been around forever. And some people find about it, it's like, yeah, I don't care, and then deny it. And then, of course, the anger phase sort of turns into, but no, it's really good now. We've made progress. Please try it. Come on. It's like, it doesn't really happen. And then when you get into the bargaining phase, okay, so what can we do to make you actually care about the Firefox developer tools? Is there any way we can get this to the state of, Nicolas Cage movies, people dying in swimming pools? Where's the compromise? Where are the metrics for this? And then you start looking at feature parity. How can we implement the same keyboard shortcuts that you might have in the Chrome DevTools? How can we make it as easy as possible for you? Because you still need to test things in different web browsers. You never want to go back to the phase where everyone tested it in Internet Explorer and nowhere else. And I think the same thing with DevTools. You want to have, you need good DevTools in all the web browsers. No matter if you love the Chrome DevTools best, or Firebug, or the tools in IE, or whatever, it doesn't matter. You need to have good tools in all web browsers. So we start bargaining. We try to strike a deal where we can offer what we actually need. And then of course the depression thing is, you have a big team. They put a lot of work into the dev tools and not a lot of people use them. So it's like, screw it, we're gonna give up, no one cares, right? But then you go into the acceptance phase, and one part here, and especially with the feedback channels, was like, how can we be different? How can we take your input? So we launched something about a month ago on a service called User Voice. And on User Voice, you can go in there and you can say what you think that you need in DevTools. So you can, for instance, say that you want to have the pseudo elements for before and after and CSS displayed in a certain way in the inspector or something like that. And people, you or anyone, you don't need an account, you don't need anything. You just go in there, sign up with your name, and then you can vote, either enter your own idea. Like, it would be amazing if I could fly spaceships with the DevTools. It would. Not this year, maybe next year. But you can also see the other ideas. You can vote for them. And this really, really helps us to make sure that we put our best effort into the things that people actually need. What are the key features? Well, it might be one thing, it might be three things. But if you have these features, they're going to change your life. The way Firebug kind of changed it a good number of years ago. And then we try different things from that. Like we have certain Sublime text integration because everyone likes Sublime text, or most people love Sublime text. If you don't, you use Vim or Emacs. And then we also have Vim key binding. So you have a certain Vim mode in DevTools right now. So if you love Vim, you can use it to a certain extent in the DevTools in Firefox. Things like this. So I think this, and then talking about acceptance again, it's more of accepting Chrome DevTools is great. And that's not a reason to give up or just accept the current state. That's really good. Let's make sure that we build great tools too, and let's make sure that we build great tools that are good for you. So if you were to go in there, and I would really ask you to do that, because the thing is, it's not just, you vote for ideas and in a black abyss and we never read it and we don't care. That's the way it works. Like, I'm in there, I read the things and we have discussions with people how to build and what people actually want. We have the DevTools team in there. Like, they read all of this. The product manager for DevTools, poor guy, is spending a lot of time just answering questions. And one more thing, beyond just voting or having comments, is also that we can update the current state. So if you wonder about a certain features, how do we fly rocket ship with the DevTools, we can say that, okay, we're not going to do that. We politely decline that suggestion. Or, it's planned. It's going to be in Firefox 35. Version numbers are browsers are great. It's a new day, add a new number. But, so also to be transparent about our work, because I think that's so important. You can build the best features ever, but if you don't have documentation around them, or if you can't be open about it, saying that, sure, that's great, we're going to deliver this 5 versions down the line, we're going to make sure we offer this to you, we're on our way there. And that's the thing you need as a developer, you need hope, right? The last thing that's going to leave you is hope. And we're also looking at Stack Overflow and our engagement there. And first looking at Stack Overflow and going from denial to acceptance is that we sponsor a few tags on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is great, people have good discussions, people help each other. And instead of for us building our own forums, not invented here again, let's go where developers are. How can we talk with the developers in an environment or in a website or in a context where they want to be, where they have their karma, where they have their accounts and all that. So we started sponsoring a number of tags on Stack Overflow that we monitor. And of course it starts with the denial thing, like does anyone actually ask anything? Does anyone use what we build? And then it goes into the anger thing, like, okay, if you look at the metrics, and again, Nicolas Cage, right? What numbers do we have? What kind of things do people actually ask? How can we measure that? And the anger was about, well, we can't really measure it. The bargaining thing is that on Stack Overflow, you can go to any tag and then you add top users, and you can see the people that ask the most questions, the people that reply to the most questions, and how many unanswered questions you have. But more or less, that's about it. And everyone in a big company wants to have a dashboard. You can show a dashboard to your manager. You know, here's the nice graph. I'm actually working and all that. So what it turned into with the acceptance phase was, well, Stack Overflow, they have a pretty good API. Let's see what we can build around that. So the accepting here was just more like, well, people actually use Stack Overflow. It's just a hard time for us measuring it. So I started just, you know, and I really believe in doing things instead of just, you know, complaining about things. So I started putting together a really easy dashboard where we could go through the tags that we monitor, and you can set in the different days and then periods and all that. So it's a nice, simple dashboard where we can see people asking questions. We can also see FAQ, which are the questions that people ask most of the time. We could also see, well, people that tag things as open web apps or Firefox OS, what are other tags that they use? Is it, you know, fail, or is it JavaScript? Is it, you know, how can we measure this? How can we see connections? And it also helps us to see, again, the same thing with the dev tools, where should we put our effort? I mean, we could come up with new APIs, you know, like whatever, proximity. But if no one's interested in proximity, everyone's just asking for better geolocation or something like that, then we need to put our efforts in there. Instead of just building things that we think are great, we need to build the things that you need, and the things that you need now, not 5 years down the line. So I also want to mention kind of a side thing, and we're going to publish a post on Hacks about it today, but we have a number of people, especially a couple of them that used to work with Patrick at Opera before, and they were working something called Web Compat, which basically means like, yeah, you can build something and it works in Chrome, great. What about all the other browsers, or Firefox, or IE? So they started the Web Compat project, which is kind of an alpha/beta state right now. But you can go in there and you can file bugs for the internet. So it's more about how can we get compatibility for major websites all across the board? How can you report things and make sure that, you know, I don't care if it works in just Firefox, it has to work everywhere. And you can go in here and you can report bugs. You can say that this or that website doesn't work in this web browser. We can follow up with that, and you can also follow up with that. I mean, if you have input on, well, this is the code that you need to fix, you know, anything from code patches to GitHub pull requests to reaching out to them, or just reporting and you know, giving us more information that this website has to become better. So I think it's a great project. You should actually go in there and check it out, and if this, you know, this could help you as well to make sure that we just get a better web that's available for everyone. So sort of there's not a lot of code in my slides, and I'm, you know, Tara's going to make up for that, I hope. But I think for me, like doing web development since the kind of dinosaur age has been, it's not about the code, right? It's more about, at least my learning, my experience, but like it's how you think about things, and that's why I want to talk about these 5 different stages, and I hope it helps, because we all go through this. We all go through like, this is shit, I hate this, I don't want to live, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you want to reach stage 5. How do we accept what we have, and how do we actually make it better? And I think my approach to this, and it's such a cliche, but you know, just get shit done, stop whining about it. We're developers, and especially with the web, you can hack anything. Just, you know, do it, start coding shit. I mean, how hard is JavaScript? Well, it depends. But overall, like it's tricky, right? And also sort of running up all of this, I'm especially happy to be here today because speaking at conferences, this is actually the 30th country I'm speaking in. So it's kind of a celebration for me. I'm done. I'm going to retire now. This is my farewell tour. Thank you for coming. Have a good life. And if there's anything that I've actually learned from all these different presentations and conferences and all that people like to have hope. People like rainbows. So on that note, I wanted to bring you a rainbow. Because rainbows are, or could be, beautiful. And I don't know if there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but there's a pot of something there at least. And with that, Thank you.